Welcome to Real Estate IQ Wisdom for Smart Moves. We will explore the insider secrets tailored exclusively for Silicon Valley home buyers, sellers, and investors, arming you to conquer the unique real estate landscape. So, without further ado, let's dive into this exciting conversation. Today, we welcome Maggie LeBranch, an accomplished associate attorney specializing in estate planning, trust, and probate law. With her deep expertise and empathetic approach, Maggie guides clients through the intricacies of estate planning, ensuring their real estate assets are well managed and their familial wishes are honored. Thank you to our sponsor, TradeMyHome.com, for their community commitment and for making this podcast possible. In today's episode, we delve into a pressing issue. 60% of Americans don't have an estate plan, risking efficient management of their real estate assets. With U.S. median home values soaring over 13%, homeowners face increasing estate tax challenges. Moreover, as 40% of adults belong to blended families, the absence of clear estate plans complicates inheritance, making tailored estate planning more crucial than ever for real estate owners. Our host today, Shared Gupta, is a real estate broker in Silicon Valley and brings a wealth of life and professional experience to his role as a podcast host. The following content is only for informational purposes. Please consult a licensed consultant for your specific situation or if you need any specific legal or tax advice.
Maggie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So give us a brief background about yourself. Who do you serve and how did it all started?
All right. Well, I'm Maggie LeBranch. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing law for about 15 years now. I'm a certified specialist in estate planning, trust, and probate law by the State Bar of California. I work with a firm called Litherland, Kennedy & Associates. I'm one of the associate attorneys there. I've been with that firm for about 5 years, although the firm has been with Santa Clara County for over 40 years. Mm-hmm. And we primarily focus on estate planning, trust, and probate law. And so we are located in Campbell, California. My personal journey, I started out graduating in 2008, which was height of the recession, if everyone remembers that. So I started in family law, and then I gradually did a little bit of everything, but ultimately I really liked estate planning, so that's what I focus on right now.
How does family law impact real estate decisions, especially during divorce time?
It's going to impact, especially during divorce, especially around here, because most people, that's their largest asset. And a lot of times there aren't enough assets to buy out the other spouse, so it's going to financially impact them in a big way. A lot of times you're going to see families devastated over having to sell their house because maybe one spouse is working and the other one isn't and can't qualify to refinance the house to be able to buy out the other one. Or you're looking at how do you equalize the division of property with all of the other assets. Maybe one does get the house and the other spouse is going to get an equal value of all of the other assets. So a lot of times it just really depends on what assets they have, how long they've been married, what is the division going to look like, is it community property, is it separate property? But this is going to have a huge financial impact on the separation where you were used to having maybe one or two incomes and you've got this huge asset and now you're looking at having to divide it. So it's going to impact them in a variety of different ways. So it just really depends.
And how does it impact children?
Oh, how does it impact children? Emotionally, it's going to be a big hit for them because this is probably the only house they've ever known in a lot of cases, even if they've grown up there and now the parents have waited and now they're in high school or maybe they're in college and they're thinking, oh, this is the house. This is going to impact them. A lot of times what you're looking at too is how is this going to impact your beneficiaries when now you've separated everything? What if you do separate the house and the spouse moves out of the area? Maybe their investments are going to go down because they did have this big pot and now they've had to divide it in two, something like that. But for the kids, it's really an emotional impact more than anything because this is the house they've grown up in, the memories. Now they've got to split their time between mom and dad or dad and mom, however their family unit is. So really that's where the impact is going to be for them, not necessarily like how is this financially, but the kids really worry about what this looks like for their little world and how does that. The good thing is kids are really resilient And if the parents are really putting them first, which a lot of people kind of lose sight of during the dissolution process, if they really insulate the kids, then it's not going to impact them as much. Divorce is hard for everybody, but if they really focus on making sure that the kids are okay, then they'll get through it. They'll really get through it.
Can you explain how property is typically divided during a divorce?
In order to understand how property is divided in a divorce, you have to think about the character of the property. And so what it means by the character is whose property really is it? So in California, we're a community property state. If you look at kind of the West Coast, most of the states along the West Coast are considered community property. So what does that mean? That's any property that's acquired during the marriage. So from the date you're married until the date you separate, anything you acquire during that time is considered community property, whether you like it or not. Any property that you acquired before marriage or after the date of separation is considered your separate property. Where it gets really sticky is when somebody comes into the marriage with separate property and the community has put money into it. So say they had a separate property and they've been helping to pay the mortgage, or maybe they redid a bathroom or something like that. And now you're looking at a divorce. Well, you've improved the property. So part of the division is easy when you're separating community property. You get 50% and the other spouse gets 50%. That's pretty easy. Where it gets really muddy is when you've brought in separate property and now the community, or vice versa, the community property is being supported by a separate property. And so then you have to go back and look at, are they getting just the money they put back into the property? Are they getting back maybe you redone the bathroom, so now the value of property is increased?
Right.
So then you have to get forensic counting involved. You have to look at that. And there's actually a lot of formulas that are already set up that says if the community has put money into separate property, or if separate property is put into community property, how you can backtrack and do all of that. So if it's really straightforward and, you're high school sweethearts and you acquired everything together, then it's pretty straightforward. In California, everything is 50-50. That's just the way it is. But when you start throwing in separate property maybe you've inherited from your family, then it starts to get a little bit more complicated in how the division looks over time. So it just sort of depends.
What steps should couples consider before they acquire real estate to avoid any future family law issues?
There's a couple of things you can do. Unfortunately, when you're looking at marriage, it's not the way it was in like the 1950s. People are just not living and being married forever anymore. So you have to really treat a marriage more like a business these days than really the long-term love, like everyone's going to live happily ever after. Because I think everyone knows the statistics that a lot of marriages are ending in divorce. I think the statistic is now over half. So you have to really look at this as a business transaction more than anything else. So what you can do, I know it's not like lovey and something you really want to think about, but you can always do a prenuptial agreement. It has to be done very specifically. It's not something you can just show up on the wedding day and say, here, this is the way we're going to treat all of the assets that we have. It has to be done before that because each of you have time to think about it. You have the ability to review it with an attorney. So it is something that really has to be negotiated and thought of. You can also do a postnuptial agreement, which is an agreement that you do after you're married, which talks about how you're going to divide your assets if something were to go wrong, but you didn't meet the time frame to do a prenuptial agreement. So just because you got married doesn't mean it's not too late to already deal with all of these issues. So you can deal with real estate, you can deal with spousal support, you can deal with child support. Pretty much think of it like a contract, anything you want to think about. And it is important to think about because a lot of couples now are getting married. They're getting married later in life where they do have a lot of separate property that they want to just very straightforward say this is what it's going to look like. Or this is their second, third, fourth, fifth marriage. I'm not here to judge you. And so it's just really straightforward. And it also makes it easier on the other end. If you are getting a divorce, it's laid out. This is what we've already agreed is going to happen. You can also create an estate plan. An estate plan is not a fail-safe way to do it. A prenuptial or a postnuptial agreement is much better when you're looking at divorce. But you can lay out in your estate plan what are your community property assets, what are the separate property assets of the husband and also of the wife or spouses or partners, or however you look at it. So there are things that you can do to just delineate who is what and how you're going to divide it in the future if there ever is a divorce. And hopefully there really isn't. So
a typical problem homeowners have when wanting to buy a new home is whether to sell first or buy first. Either way is risky. When ready to look for a new home, TradeMyHome.com, powered by Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, offers an upfront guaranteed cash offer on your current home. Are you moving in the next 3 to 6 months? Text PAIR to 408-740-7400 for a free and no-obligation professional equity appraisal report. For more information, visit TradeMyHome.com or call 408-740-7400. Remember, at TradeMyHome.com, your home is sold guaranteed or we'll buy it.
Can you explain the probate process?
I'd absolutely love to talk about probate. I love a good probate. So in the state of California, there's 3 ways to avoid probate. Number 1, you can have a trust. Number 2, you can hold the asset in joint tenancy. A lot of times when you think of joint tenancy, you think of property or you think of like a bank account. And the third option is to have a beneficiary. The limit to pass outside of probate is $184,500. And so if you have a trust or you have a beneficiary or you hold things in joint tenancy, those are exceptions to that $184,000 limit. Now, why do you want to avoid the probate process? So number 1, on a real estate, if you think about it, there's no way to put a beneficiary on there. So you're either holding it in joint tenancy or you're holding it in a trust. So if neither one of those are happening, then you're going to end up in probate. In the state of California, we have statutory fees associated with a probate. So you can actually go on and calculate the value of your estate and figure out what it's going to cost your family to probate something in the state of California. They're set by the state of California. So if I have a probate, for example, I don't get a choice on what I get paid. The state of California says if the assets are valued at X, then the attorney gets paid Y. So that's why I love a probate, because I don't have to fight with anybody about it. It's already set up. This is just the way it's going to be. In Santa Clara County, we have 2 probate judges, and they handle all of the trust administrations, all of the conservatorships, all the guardianships, and all of the probates. So if I filed a probate tomorrow, for example, I'm not going to be in court to see the judge for probably 3 to 4 months just to start the probate.
Because there are 2 judges.
Because there's only 2 judges, and they're doing all of that, right? And they're impacted by budget cuts just like any other court thing. In that time frame, nothing can happen. You can't sell property. You can't list property. You're not accessing bank accounts. You're not able to pay any bills. And a lot of times, that's what you need help with. You need help with funeral expenses. You need help paying hospital bills. You're trying to list the property to capture. Maybe it's a good time on the market.
Sure.
None of that can happen if you're stuck in this probate. If you have a really easy vanilla probate and no one's fighting, it's pretty straightforward, there's just the house or whatever it is, you're looking at probably 24 months to 36 months to finish it from start to finish.
Oh my God.
And that's how long it's going to take before it gets distributed to all of the beneficiaries. So now everyone's waiting for all of that time to get that. The other thing that a lot of people don't think about when they're thinking about a probate is that it's open to the public. So all of your financial information, creditor information, the beneficiary names, their addresses, that's all part of the public record. So anybody can pull that up and see who's getting what, how much are they getting, where do they live, so that all of that is accessible to just anybody on the street. So we want to avoid a probate if we can, absolutely.
And how can a probate be avoided?
Again, you want to look at your assets. If you have any real property in the state of California, absolutely you're going to want to have a trust. Because if you think about it, most pieces of property here in California are valued more than $184,000. And it's even if you own part of it, maybe you own something with your sibling or with your child or something like that, you should still have a trust. The other thing, you want to make sure you have beneficiaries on your accounts if you don't have a trust, or you just want to make sure you're under that $84,000 limit. I don't like joint tenancy necessarily as a way to avoid probate, because joint tenancy is sort of like a race to the finish line. It'll save you at the first death, and then whoever the surviving joint tenant is, if they don't have a beneficiary, it's not in a trust, there's no other joint tenant that's added, they haven't really saved themselves from probate after all.
So is estate planning also important for people who don't have much assets with them?
Absolutely. So just because I said you need a trust, you don't necessarily always have to have a trust. I'm not trying to pigeonhole everyone here, but you have to think about the other part of it that a lot of people don't consider, but is equally as important, which is, what if something happens to you while you're living, but you're incapacitated? So maybe you don't have property. maybe everything's in a brokerage account and you have a beneficiary or something like that, or you have a small estate, maybe you're a little bit older and you've spent all of your money living your life. Awesome. But you need to also think about who's going to help manage your finances if you're incapacitated.
Right.
Who's going to make your medical decisions if you're incapacitated? Or maybe you're not older, maybe you're younger, right? You're just starting out with life. This is your first job. You're building your portfolio. If something catastrophic happens to you, mom and dad can't make that decision for you anymore. So anybody over the age of 18 at a minimum should have some basic estate plan. They should have a basic will. They should have a power of attorney for finances. They should have a healthcare power of attorney at a minimum. Then as you build up into your life and you start acquiring property, then yes, maybe you do get a trust. Or in reverse, you've sold all your property, so maybe you don't need the trust anymore. You're still going to need those other documents for the incapacity, the what if life happens between when you're living fully and when you pass away. So it's still just as important to have some sort of estate plan, even if it's not the whole package, the whole trust package.
And how frequently can people update their plans?
So long as you're living and you have capacity, you can update it at any time. I wouldn't say most, but 99% of our documents are revocable, so they're amendable at any time, so long as you're still able to do that. Generally, I recommend every 3 to 5 years, you should pull it out, dust it off, and remind yourself about what it says, because you probably did it and then forgot about it. Or maybe the people you selected for your agents, you don't want them anymore. Or a lot of times what we see are now the kids are adults. They're responsible enough, and they were minors, but now we want them to be our agents. So big things like that is another reason why you'd pull it out. So every 3 to 5 years, or big life changes like that. The kids are adults. Somebody's passed away. You don't like them anymore. Those are the things that you should be looking at over time.
Thank you so much, Maggie, for being part of our show today. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and let's stay in touch.
Great. Thank you for having me. It was a great time.
For the next episode of Real Estate IQ, featuring Ami Shah, the founder of Ami Shah CPA.
So I come from a Jain business family and came to US on a dependent visa.
She aims to revolutionize tax planning by integrating innovative strategies and philanthropy, empowering clients to achieve financial prosperity.
I got married and came here. Soon to realize that nobody sponsors any visa and I need visa. I needed visa to work. So
check out our full episode on Tuesdays at 5 o'clock Pacific and 8 o'clock Eastern on YouTube and Apple Podcast. Thank you for listening to the podcast and acknowledging the wisdom of smart moves in real estate in Silicon Valley. Please share this episode with a friend, subscribe, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts at Real Estate IQ. Thank you to our sponsor, TradeMyHome.com, for their client commitment and for making this podcast possible. If you're considering buying or selling a home, visit TradeMyHome.com. Until next time, remember to stay ahead in the real estate game.